I didn't plan for any of it. Not the dinner. Not the silence that followed. Not the way it stayed in me, like heat held under the skin, refusing to fade. It started the way most things in my life do, quietly, almost forgettably. I was just finishing up inventory in the college archive room, where I'd been working part-time to pay my tuition. The building always smelled like old paper and lemon polish, the kind of place where footsteps echo longer than they should. She was there, like she usually was, leaning over a table stacked with fragile manuscripts. Dr. Elena Hart. Though she told me the first week to just call me Elena when it's just us working here. I still never did. I said her full name every time. Something about it felt safer. She was older than me, mid-40s, I'd guess, but she carried herself in a way that made time feel irrelevant. Calm, composed, a quiet steadiness I kept orbiting without meaning to. That day, she was wearing a charcoal sweater, sleeves pushed up to her elbows, a smudge of ink on her wrist like she'd forgotten it was there. Most people would have wiped it off. She just kept working, unaware or unbothered, that it made her look human, fallible, touchable. I was shelving the last of the archive boxes when she spoke without looking up. "You haven't eaten, have you?" I froze. I don't know how she knew. Maybe the way I moved. Maybe the silence of my stomach had a sound of its own. "I'll eat later," I said too quickly. Her hand paused mid-page turn. She looked at me then. Really looked. "Come with me." No softness, no suggestion. Just direction. I followed her. We didn't go far, just the campus cafe downstairs. The kind that always felt too empty at night, with fluorescent lighting that made everything look a little washed out. But with her sitting across from me, it felt warmer, somehow. She ordered soup. I ordered whatever seemed simplest. Chicken. Rice. Something I didn't have to think about. We talked, but not about anything important. Not at first. She asked how classes were going. I asked how the archive restoration project was progressing. She made a joke about handwriting from 1890 looking like someone wrote while moving during a small earthquake. I laughed harder than I should have. She noticed that. I noticed her noticing. The conversation slowed. Not in a bad way. In the way where words weren't the important part anymore. Her fingers brushed mine once when she reached for the salt. By accident. Probably. But I felt it. All of it. It went straight up my arm, like a match being struck. She didn't pull away immediately. Just paused there. 1 second. 2. Then she continued as if nothing happened. Except something had. I tried to speak. To ask something simple. Anything. But my voice stayed inside me, caught somewhere between my chest and throat. She finished her soup. I barely touched my plate. When we were leaving, she stood just slightly closer to me than she needed to. Not touching. Just close enough that I could feel her presence. Warm. Steady. A gravity I didn't realize I had leaned toward. At the door, she said quietly, "Good night." But there was a softness under it. Something unspoken. Something almost breakable. I walked back home, hands in my pockets, pretending I wasn't replaying the entire evening in my head. The ink on her wrist. The pause of her fingers on mine. The way she looked at me before she said goodnight. I know it was only dinner. I know nothing happened. But every part of me still feels the heat of that moment. Like something started and I don't know where it's going, but I can't stop walking toward it the next time I saw her. It was late afternoon, the kind where the sun comes through the windows at an angle that makes dust look like it's floating in its own slow universe. I was repairing a loose latch on one of the archival cabinets, something I easily could have ignored, but fixing things gave me an excuse to stay in that room longer. Elena was working at her desk, glasses low on her nose, hair loosely pinned back with one rebellious strand falling near her cheek. She kept brushing it away without thinking, only for it to slip forward again. There was something about that small, repeated motion that made her seem tired, or worn down in a way she didn't want anyone to see. She didn't look up when she said, "You don't have to do that. I already put in a work order." "I know," I answered, tightening the screw anyway. "They take weeks. Thought I'd just fix it." A pause. A quiet one. "Thank you," she murmured. So soft I almost wondered if I imagined it. I didn't respond. Part of me felt like if I spoke, I'd break whatever fragile balance was hanging in the air. She continued reading, but something had shifted. Her shoulders were a little more relaxed. The room felt less like a workplace and more like, I don't know, somewhere people sit when they don't want to leave. After a while, she exhaled, long, controlled, but with a tremor she couldn't hide. Are you all right? I asked before I could stop myself. She didn't answer right away. She didn't look at me. Her fingers just stilled on the page. That's a complicated question, she said, finally, with a small, humorless laugh. Not an invitation. Not a dismissal. Just truth. I nodded, shifting to sit on the table's edge near her desk, not too close, just close enough to be there. She kept her eyes on the papers, but I could see her blinking more than usual. Blinking not to see better, but to not feel too much. I don't sleep well, she said quietly. Lately, I didn't say I'd noticed. But I had. Dark circles faintly softened by makeup, the way her posture leaned in on itself some days. Instead, I said, sometimes dinner helps. The corner of her mouth twitched. Not a smile exactly, but something close to remembering one. That was nice, she said. Her voice gentled on the last word. We didn't talk for a bit. We didn't need to. I watched her hands move across the pages, steady, precise, but with a slight tremor she kept trying to control. I wondered what it cost her to hold herself together like that. Eventually, she stood, gathering her materials. Could you help me carry these to the restoration lab? Of course. We walked side by side down the hallway, our footsteps echoing softly on the tile. Nothing dramatic happened. There was no touch, no accidental brush this time. But as we reached the lab door, she stopped, not looking at me, but close enough that I could feel her breath. Thank you, she said again. This time, the words felt heavier, like something she wasn't used to asking for. And I haven't stopped replaying the way she said them. It was raining that evening. Not a dramatic storm, just the kind of rain that makes the world sound softer, like it's thinking about something. I was in the archive room later than I should have been, finishing a data entry log I'd been avoiding. The building felt different at night, emptier, like even the walls were tired. She was there too. Elena sat at the far end of the long wooden table, a desk lamp casting a warm amber circle over her notes. The rest of the room stayed dim, shadows stretching long. She didn't seem surprised to see me, or maybe she was too tired to show it. You should be home, she said, but her tone didn't ask me to go. You too, I replied. She huffed a small laugh. Not amused, just acknowledging the truth. The rain tapped softly against the windows. The only other sound was the soft scrape of her pen. I tried to keep working, but my eyes kept drifting toward her hands. They weren't shaking today, but there was something in the way she held her pen, firm, like she needed control of something. After a while, she pushed back from her chair, leaning back, rubbing her eyes with her thumb and knuckle. You ever feel like you can't step out of your own life? She asked. She wasn't talking to me. She was talking to the dark, to the rain, to the quiet. But I answered anyway, more than I'm comfortable admitting. That made her look at me, not startled, but curious, like she had forgotten I was someone who could feel things too. She stood and crossed to the window, arms folded, watching the rain. I found myself standing too, not to follow, just to be near. We were close, too close to pretend it was accidental. I could see tiny droplets of rain on the glass reflected in her eyes. She smelled like cedar and something faintly floral, nothing strong, just enough to make the moment feel softer. She spoke without turning. My ex-husband called earlier. My chest tightened, not from jealousy, just from the sharpness in her voice. He wants to sell the house, she continued. The one we lived in. A pause. The one I thought I'd grow old in. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't speak. She finally turned toward me, leaning back against the window frame. Her face was calm, but her hands were gripping her own arms, thumb pressing too hard into skin. I don't know why I'm telling you this, she said. I did. Because I listened. Because I saw her. But I didn't say that. I'm glad you did, I murmured. Something flickered between us. Not dramatic. Not sweeping. Just there. Her breath caught. Just slightly. Then, her phone rang. The sound felt too loud, too sharp, cutting straight through whatever had begun forming. She looked down at the screen. Didn't answer. Just silenced it and set the phone face down on the table. We stood there, matched stillness, rain whispering outside. If I had reached out, just an inch, my hand would have touched hers. I didn't, but I thought about it. Hard. And she knew. She didn't step back, but she didn't step closer either. The moment held, trembling, fragile, waiting, and I still don't know which of us broke it first. The rain didn't stop for 3 days, and neither did whatever was happening between us. We didn't talk about that night. We didn't mention the closeness, the shared breath, the nearly touched hands. But the silence was different now, denser, charged, aware. On Thursday, we were both closing the archive. End-of-week exhaustion hung over us. She was putting away restored documents, and I was locking cabinets, but our movements felt careful, like we were each afraid of brushing too close. When the final overhead lights clicked off, I thought we would leave at the same time, walk out together like we always did. But she stayed standing at the table. "Wait," Elena said. Not loudly, not urgently, just enough that I stopped. She didn't turn toward me right away. Her hands were flat on the table, fingers splayed, like she needed something solid to hold on to. "We should talk," she said. My throat tightened. "Okay." She lifted her head just slightly. I could see her reflection in the window, the soft profile of someone tired, but trying to be honest. "This, whatever this is," she started, and then stopped. The words seemed to snag somewhere inside her. She tried again, slower. "I look at you, and it feels like I remember something I thought I had lost," she said. "Some part of myself, and I don't know what to do with that." I didn't breathe, didn't move. She let out a low laugh, not amused, more bewildered. "I'm too old to be unsure," she whispered. I stepped closer, not enough to touch her, just enough to be near. "You don't have to decide right now," I said. She finally turned toward me. Her eyes, God, there was so much there. Not romance, not desire. Something heavier, something lived in. "I do," she said softly. "Because this can't just be something vague, something quiet. Not for me." She swallowed. "I've lived through the aftermath of blurred lines. I know the cost." Her voice wasn't steady, and that scared me more than anything. I could have told her I wasn't trying to make this complicated. I could have said I didn't want to hurt her, but those would have been the wrong truths. So I said nothing. The silence stretched. Not comfortable, aching. She looked at me then like she was searching for an answer in my face. Like whatever I said next could change something fundamental. "What are we doing?" she asked. The question landed between us like a dropped glass, soft, then shattering quietly across the floor. I didn't have an answer, but I knew what I felt. "I don't know," I said, "but I don't want to step away from it." She closed her eyes, just for a second, like that hurt, or relieved something, or both. When she opened them, there was no hiding, no mask, just a woman standing in the doorway of something frightening and familiar. "I can't afford to break again," she whispered. And I realized she wasn't warning me. She was asking me not to be the person who does it. I thought things would feel heavier after that night, like we'd be avoiding each other or pretending nothing had been said. But it wasn't like that. If anything, we were gentler. Quieter, yes, but not distant. It was as if both of us had to move more slowly now, like stepping across a frozen lake where the ice could crack under the wrong pressure. The shift came on a Tuesday. We were sorting through a set of old correspondence letters that had been donated for preservation. Most were love letters from the early 1900s. Beautiful script, dry ink, the kind of longing that feels almost ancient. Elena read them aloud softly as she cataloged them. I worked across the table, but I kept listening to her voice, the way it lingered on certain phrases. "I miss the sound of you breathing near me. Time is a room I cannot leave without you. Please write back soon. Please." Her voice changed slightly on the last one. Barely, but I heard it. She set the letter down and breathed in slowly, like she didn't want the breath to shake. "You remind me of him," she said, not looking at me, not moving. I didn't know who him was, but I knew enough not to speak. She kept her eyes on the paper. "My first love," she clarified. "I was 19. He was 20. Her hand rested lightly on the letter as if it were a pulse. We were impossibly young and impossibly sure of everything. And I believed that love meant certainty. Her thumb pressed the edge of the paper. "Hard. He died. A car accident. Just before our final exams." The words didn't break. They came out controlled, like stones she'd learned to place carefully, one at a time. I didn't rush to fill the silence. The moment didn't need fixing. It needed room. He had this way of listening, she continued. Like the world paused for him. Like whatever I said mattered. She exhaled, slow, shaky. You do that too. My chest tightened, not with jealousy, but with something reverent. A weight. A recognition of something deeper than attraction. She finally looked at me, not searching this time, not questioning, just seeing. I don't mean you're a replacement, she said quickly, voice soft but sure. You're not. He's gone. And we're not. This is not. Her words tangled. She shook her head once, trying to clear it. All I mean is, I haven't felt this kind of presence from someone in a very long time. The room went very still. I wanted to say something. Anything. But everything I could think of felt too big. Too heavy. Too wrong. So I just nodded. She smiled, not a happy smile. A knowing one. The kind you give to someone who now carries one of your ghosts. We went back to working. Quietly. Carefully. Like we were touching something sacred. But before we left, she paused at the doorway. I'm different with you, she said without turning around. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. I'm still trying to understand how a whisper can feel like an earthquake. We didn't talk about what she told me. Not in the days that followed. Not even in the silences where it hovered between us. But something had changed. Not in a dramatic, sweeping way. No sudden declarations, no trembling confessions. Just a soft shift in the air when we were near each other, an understanding we both stepped into without agreement or permission. One evening, I found her sitting on the floor of the archive room, legs folded beneath her, surrounded by open document boxes. The overhead lights were off. Only the desk lamp glowed, a warm island in the dim room. She wasn't working. Her hands were resting in her lap, empty. She looked tired. Not physically. The other kind. The kind that sits in the ribs and doesn't leave. I sat down beside her without asking. She didn't look at me. Didn't need to. The rain had stopped, but the world outside still felt wet, quiet, like everything was holding its breath. She spoke first. I used to think love was something you fell into, she said. Fast. Helplessly. A pause. Her voice was steady. Now I think it's something you arrive at. Slowly. By accident. While trying not to. I didn't respond. I didn't trust my voice. She drew her knees a little closer to her chest. This shouldn't be happening, she said. No anger, no fear. Just honesty. Not because of age, or history, or rules. Just because it will mean something. Her fingers tightened briefly. And I don't do halfway anymore. I let the silence sit. I let it breathe. I understood. When I finally spoke, it was small. I don't want halfway either. She turned her head then. Not dramatically, just enough for our eyes to meet. There was no heat in the look. No hunger. Just recognition. Something steady. Something that had taken its time. You scare me, she said. Not you, this. Us. The way it has been quietly building, step by step, like it was always going to lead here. I know, I answered. I reached out, slowly enough she could move away. She didn't. My fingers brushed the back of her hand. Light, brief, almost nothing. But she exhaled like she had been holding her breath for weeks. Not a collapse into me. Not surrender. Just a release. She leaned her shoulder into mine. Soft, careful, but real. We sat like that. Not speaking. Not planning. Not defining anything. Just existing in the same shared gravity. I could feel her heartbeat through her sleeve. Not fast. Not trembling. Just there. Hers. Alive. Steady. She whispered, "Don't make me regret this." It wasn't a warning. It was the closest thing to trust someone can give. I didn't promise her anything. Promises belong to people who think they control the future. Instead, I rested my forehead gently against her temple. A touch small enough to be nothing. And everything. We didn't move. We didn't rush. We didn't name it. We simply arrived. Together. I'm telling this now from a distance. Not years, but enough time for the edges to soften and the details to arrange themselves into something I can understand. What happened between us wasn't sudden. It didn't crash into our lives. It unfolded, quiet and patient, as if it had always been waiting for us to notice it. We didn't make any announcements. We didn't change overnight. We didn't call what we were love, not at first. Instead, we just kept showing up. Sometimes that looked like shared silence in the archive room. Sometimes it was her making tea for both of us, even though she always forgets hers and lets it go cold. Sometimes it was me walking her to her car on evenings when the world felt too heavy. There were no grand gestures, no sweeping declarations, no forever promises. But I started to understand something. Love isn't always lightning. Sometimes it's the slow, steady strike of flint, spark by spark, until one day you realize there's warmth. Being with her changed me, though not in the obvious ways. I didn't become more confident, or more mature, or more anything you can measure from the outside. But I learned how to be present, how to sit with someone without needing to fix them, or rescue them, or explain myself. I learned how to hold silence like something valuable, not something to escape. She changed, too. She started laughing again, quiet, unpolished laughs that belonged to no one but herself. She began leaving work before it consumed her. She stopped apologizing for taking up space in the world. Not because I saved her, but because she no longer tried to fold herself away. We didn't become perfect. We didn't become easy. We just became real. Some days, the past still shadows her. Some days, I still feel young in ways I wish I didn't. But we've built something that allows for that. For fear. For history. For the parts of us we thought no one would ever sit beside and understand. One evening, not so long ago, we sat on her living room floor, our backs against the couch, lights off except for the window glow of the distant city. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. Her hand rested lightly on my knee. My shoulder leaned against her arm. No urgency. No hesitation. Just belonging. I think about the first night we had dinner together, how everything felt like a beginning I couldn't name yet. I think about the near touch by the window, the rain, the silence that said everything. I think about how easy it would have been to step backward instead of forward. But we didn't. And I'm grateful every day that we didn't. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?